Hello friends, my name is Dr. Mark Sandoval, and it's a pleasure to be here with you. I'm coming from New Paradigm Ministries, and we are going to go on a journey together called Truth for Life. And on this journey, we are going to explore a number of different things. You see, I'm a medical doctor, and my background is in medicine. And I have had the privilege of working in hospitals, of working in clinics, working in mission locations, and I have also had the privilege of working in a lifestyle center setting with lifestyle medicine, and now in a different setting that I'll describe later. What we're going to be looking at today is we're going to be looking at the beginnings of a new perspective. And in fact, through this entire series, we are going to be looking at a new way of seeing the things around us. You see, what we see is dependent upon the lenses that we wear. Right? And the lenses that we wear have a significant impact upon what we see, what we perceive. Right? And so this is going to be an interesting journey for us so that we can perceive new things, so that we can pursue new areas and new directions in our life and new solutions where we never thought we could find them. Okay. So, as a physician, I was taught in medical school, I was taught that disease is related to risk factors. And of course, I'm sure you have heard the same thing, right? You have a particular disease because you have certain genetics, you have a family history, and that was passed on from generation to generation, or you're a certain age, and because you get older, then you develop these conditions, or you're a certain gender, and you're predisposed to these type of conditions because of that gender, or you have lived a life where you have consumed certain types of foods or certain types of substances, or you exercised or you didn't exercise, and all of these converge together in order to bring you to a place where you have a certain condition, right? A certain disease. And if that's the case, well, then we don't really know what the cause is. There's a possibility of many, many different types of things that we can look at that might be a cause. And of course, since disease is a physical thing, we need to look for physical solutions. And so we focus on medication, and we focus on vaccination, and we focus on radiation, and we focus on surgery, and so on. And all of these are appropriate in their appropriate context, right? But could it be that there is another dimension when it comes to disease and understanding what disease is and what it's related to? And if we understood that dimension, could it be that we would have a whole vast area of things that we could look at and things that we could participate in and things that could change in our lives so that we don't have to have the disease, we don't have to be subject to all of the physical treatments all the time, and there can actually be a cure. But if there's a cure, there must be a cause. But the problem is that in our healthcare system, I was never taught as a medical student and as a physician what the cause of disease is. I was only taught that there are various different risk factors associated with different diseases. And in fact, all of my colleagues were taught that way. And if you don't know the cause of disease, well then how can you get to the cure? You might be able to stumble across it, perhaps, but can you really focus on the real deal if you don't know what the real deal is? Now, if you go to your physician and you say, okay, well, why do I have this condition that I have? Why do I have this disease? And then you ask them, why do I have that disease? And, well, they might say, well, you're a certain age and they'll go through risk factors, and you say, no, I want to know what's the cause for my disease? Why do I have this disease? And they might talk about this or that or the other thing, and you keep pressing them on the regards to do you know what the cause of my disease is? Well, they're eventually going to have to acknowledge, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what the cause is. And it's interesting that the predominant system that we have in order to take care of our health and so on doesn't actually know what the cause is of the disease that they're treating. And that's problematic. It is. It's problematic. Now, I don't blame anybody for that. I mean, I grew up in the system. I was involved in it from little. My parents were involved in the medical system. I was around the hospital since I was little. In fact, sometimes my babysitting time would actually be in the hospital. And so I've been around the system my whole life. And I completely appreciate the system that is available and what it can offer to individuals. The conventional medical system is excellent at diagnostics. It's excellent at evaluating what's going on. It's excellent at emergency or trauma care. It's excellent from a surgical intervention standpoint. But there's a place where it breaks down and it's not so excellent, and that is in long-term care of chronic non-communicable diseases. It doesn't really do that well. It doesn't. So, is there something that we can learn, something that we can understand, something that we can know, a perspective, a view, glasses that we can put on, that we can see and understand things differently and come to different conclusions and different solutions? Because that's really what we're looking for. So I want to tell you about one patient of mine. This patient was a particular one that caused me to recognize there's something else going on when it comes to disease. I'm going to call her Michelle. That's not her real name. But Michelle came to me years ago, and she had stage 3C ovarian cancer. So she had a tumor, I believe, on the right ovary, and she had 11 tumors throughout her abdominal cavity. Now, previous to this, when she had cancer, she initially went through chemotherapy, and after her first round of chemotherapy, her cancer was larger in size. Each tumor was larger in size, and there were a few more of them. And so she went through a second round of chemotherapy, and after the second round, again, larger in size, more in number. And the option for her at that point was to try an experimental regimen of chemotherapeutic agents to see if that would help her in her particular situation. She had been an athlete, she had been a coach, she had been a very active individual in her life, and so she wasn't really interested, because now, after 2 rounds of chemotherapy, she could barely walk, she could barely get out of a chair, and she was not really interested in another round of chemotherapy. And so I happened to be working at a lifestyle center in the southeastern part of the United States at the time, and she found our website, and she decided she wanted to check out some natural remedies and see what they could do for her. Of course, the usual thought that some might have is that, well, natural remedies, what's that going to do if she's already been through 2 rounds of chemotherapy and that wasn't working? Well, let's fast forward. She comes to our center. I'm her physician. And, of course, we do what we do. We put her on a whole food, plant-based diet, and we put her on 2 meals a day, unless she needs the third. We have her exercising as walking. We have her outside in the fresh air and sunshine, and then there are some herbs that we put her on, and she was also undergoing hyperthermia treatments, so increasing her temperature by putting in her a hot bath, and there's a number of effects associated with it. It increases natural killer cells and cytotoxic T lymphocytes in the tumor. It disrupts blood flow to the tumor for about 96 hours afterwards. It increases the death of the cancer cells as opposed to the normal cells. It increases your heat shock proteins, which we now know are involved in immune function, and so on. So there's a number of effects associated with it, and these are things that we did for her while she was at our center. But in addition to that, I came to understand that the past history that she had was a bit difficult. She never knew her father, never seen him once in her life. And her mother, well, her mother was caught up in drugs and alcohol and men and so on. And by the time Michelle was 8 years old, her mother left her with the grandparents, which was actually a good move because the grandparents were stable and they provided a stable environment for her. But mother would come back into the picture every few months or every few years, and now mother was jealous of the relationship that Michelle had with her grandparents, which she now called mom and dad. And so there would be chaos and everything that would happen there, and this happened periodically throughout her lifetime, and so there was significant bitterness and resentment that she had towards her mother. And I knew that resentment and bitterness was not going to help her in her process of healing. And so I challenged her with something that we'll talk about later, but I challenged her to love her mother. The question is how? How do you do that when you can't love them? We'll get to that later in the series. But anyways, I challenged her to love her mother and to let her mother be free so that her mother can be however she wants to be. Michelle doesn't need her to be a certain way in order for her to be okay, and to continue to be able to love her even in her thoughts when her mother's not around. And so, well, Michelle was desperate. I mean, she's, of course, facing a significant cancer and things aren't working so far. And so she begins in this process. And again, later in this series, we'll talk about more specifics of what that looks like. So she starts putting this into place along with the other natural remedies, a healthy lifestyle and healthy diet and so on. At the end of 2.5 weeks, her cancer markers are down into the normal range, and she is able to walk very well. And in fact, she is now to the point where she can jog a little bit and then walk, and then jog a little bit and then walk, and she can go for a couple of miles. Oh, she is excited and she is very happy. And she goes home, and 2 months later, she has a repeat scan, and the repeat scan shows that half of the tumors, well, she has 5 remaining tumors, 6 are gone, and the 5 remaining tumors are smaller than what they were before. And so great, she is so excited, she is happy. 2 months later, we get a call. Cancer markers are back up. Oh, okay, well, what's going on? Well, can you guess what's going on? Yeah. Mom came back into the picture. And now she's back in the bitterness, she's back in the resentment, she's back in these, these various different things. And now her cancer markers are going back up. Now she's still eating well, she's still exercising, she's still doing all of the other healthy lifestyle things, but the only thing has changed that mom came back in the picture, the resentment is back, and now the cancer is coming back up. And so I counseled with her again. We talked about the things that we did before. She started implementing again about letting her mother be free. Mother can be however she wants to be, and taking and giving that love to mother. And she started implementing that again. Cancer markers back down. So that showed me that in her particular case, it was really an issue of the mind. It was the resentment and the bitterness against her mother that was really the driving factor behind the cancer. Yes, it was a physical manifestation. Yes, she had real cancer in her body, but the beginning of the issue was in her mind, and it was associated with the relationship that she had with her mother. And since the chemotherapy did not fix what was going on in her mind, it was not fixing the cancer. And since it wasn't just a lifestyle issue or a diet issue, even though she continues with the lifestyle and the diet, you could see that the cancer was following the progression of the thoughts in her mind. That really began to get me to think in regards to the impact of the mind on disease. And it's powerful. It is a powerful effect that the mind has on disease. And we're going to be exploring that more as we go through this series. In fact, that's much of what this series is about, is looking at what is going on in the mind of the individual, in the relationships of the individual, and how that relates to health as a whole. So this series is going to bring us to the place where we come to find the very foundations of disease, the very foundations of health, And also, those very foundations are going to help us not only from a physical healing standpoint, but it's going to help us from a social standpoint. It's going to help us in our relationships. It's going to help us in our mental health. And it's going to help us in other areas or other aspects of our lives as well. A comprehensive program as we look for truth for life. Now, my story. What's my story? Because you need to know where I'm coming from. So I grew up in a home, in a split home actually. My parents both had been married and divorced previously. My mother had 2 children from her first marriage, and then my parents got together and they had me. And so I was my father's only and my mother's third. And then when I was in my early teenage years, my parents divorced. And so I then lived with my mother after that point, and that was kind of the life that I grew up in. And yes, I grew up in Christian America, and I grew up in a Christian home. And that was the background that I was in. And I never left that, but I did struggle with addictions. And I did struggle with negative thoughts, and I did struggle with in relationships and so on. And I had all of these things that I was struggling with, and those struggles were getting worse and worse over time. Yes, I would try. Yes, I would want to be free. Yes, I was pursuing that freedom, but I was having such a struggle in overcoming, and I just couldn't find the key to be free. Well, in this process, I pursued becoming a doctor, and I went through all of the training, and I became an emergency medicine physician. My wife kind of talked me into that, that particular field. I was thinking maybe trauma surgery. Well, in fact, first I was thinking family practice, and then I thought maybe trauma surgery, and then my wife talked me into emergency, and I'm very glad that she did. I enjoy working in the emergency department. I enjoy helping people there in their traumas and their gunshot wounds and their acute care situations where they need help and they need it right away, or they're going to die right away. And unfortunately, people do. They still do. As much as you're working on them and you want to save them, people still die. And so I'm going through this training for emergency medicine, and while I'm in the midst of this training, all of these things are just coming crashing down upon me. The addictions are getting worse. I'm not doing well in my relationships. There's the pressure of work and school and exams and all of this stuff, and it's just all crashing down on me. And it's too much to bear. It's too much to carry. And I finally come to the point in my life where I am not able to get myself out of my problems. Now, before, I had been able to lie my way out of situations, figure my way out of situations, get my way out of situations, but now I was at a point where I was stuck. I was absolutely stuck. I was on the verge of leaving my wife and children. I knew that all I was doing was hurting them. I didn't want to. I hated myself because I did it, but I couldn't stop it. And I was, again, caught up in the addictions, and I couldn't stop those either, and I knew that they were harmful for my family, and I didn't think that my family deserved to go down the rabbit hole that I was thinking of going down. And so I was thinking of leaving them because it would be better for me to go down alone than for me to take them down with me. That was my thought process. And it was in this crisis, it was in this time that I finally gave up on my own ability to try to get myself out of a situation. And in the crisis and in being stuck, it's where I finally was willing to let God rescue me out of my situation, and to depend upon a power above and beyond myself in order to get me out of a situation I could not get myself out of. I had tried, and yes, I had been in a Christian environment, had Christian beliefs and all that kind of stuff, but it still wasn't working. And one reason now that I look back and realize that was the case is because I hadn't been willing to surrender everything. I would always withhold something. There was always something that I held back. There was always something that I wanted to still be in control of. And I finally came to the point of realizing if I continue to be the one that's in control, I will destroy everything, because that's exactly what's happening. And I need someone else to be in control. Now, I was not excited about that. That was a fearful thought. I was not, oh, that was a troublesome thought. But I didn't have a choice. I didn't have a choice. I had to either rely upon Him and let Him direct in the process of me going free, or I was going to destroy everything. And so, life began to change. And it began to take an entirely different direction. And where I had only had failures, I began to have successes. Where I had no self-control before, I started to have self-control. Where life was just one round of an attempt and failure, an attempt and failure, an attempt and failure, I began to have a success and a movement in a particular direction, and I could look back 6 weeks from now and go, oh, things are different. And then I could look back 6 months later and go, oh, things are really different. And I could look back a year later, ago and say, whoa, look at how things are different. Amazing. And so from that training, I continued to work in emergency medicine. Life at home and life in other areas of my life changed dramatically. And then I ended up going to a mission hospital and working in a mission hospital. And while I was working in the mission hospital, not only was I doing emergency medicine, but I was also doing family practice. And so with family practice, in emergency medicine, let me say this first, in emergency medicine, you have a patient once and you don't see them again, typically. I mean, it's, not often that somebody comes in 3 times for being shot, So you usually see them once and then that's it. In family practice, you see them over and over and over again. You see them every 3 months, every 6 months, every year or so. And so you continue to have patients. And that was something new to me. And now they're coming in not just with gunshot wounds, and I don't get to suture and do other things like that, but now they have diabetes, and now they have high blood pressure, and now they have high cholesterol, and now they have obesity, and now I'm dealing with all of these chronic non-communicable diseases, and what am I supposed to do? Well, there's the medication, and so let's try the medication, and let's try then that's not working after 6 months, let's try another medication, or let's increase the dose, and so on. And so now all I'm doing is increasing the amount of chemicals, the amount of medications that an individual is taking, and the condition's not going away. And that frustrated me because I went into medicine to help people. And I realized what I was doing was not really helping them. Now, it was, I would say temporarily, yes, it would be helpful, but in the long term, I was really not turning things around because I wasn't getting to the root of the problem. And so then I began to study in regards to health and where health actually comes from, and I began to be interested, more and more interested in lifestyle and natural remedies, and to be involved in a practice where I would educate rather than medicate. Okay? And so now I'm left with a decision. It seemed as though I was standing on the edge of a canyon in the dark, can't see anything, absolutely pitch black dark. My toes are hanging over the edge of the canyon, and now God says, jump. I still have a significant debt burden from my medical school. I have a wife and 4 children at this point. And I don't know how you can make money in lifestyle medicine. But I understand that God is calling me to jump. And that was frightening. Absolutely frightening. That thought. But since He had rescued me before, and He had set me free when I didn't have a clue of how He could set me free, I realized, okay, I'm just going to have to trust You. And so I ended up transitioning to a lifestyle center, again in the southeastern of the United States, so that I could learn how to use lifestyle, how to use natural remedies in the process of helping individuals to freedom from their disease. And well, doctors, we are skeptical. We're trained to be skeptical. That's just how it is. It's part of the education process. And I was skeptical when I got there. Now, I was interested in it. I wanted to get into it, but I was skeptical when I got there because there were patients that were there, and I thought, oh man, they should not be here. They should be in the hospital. And indeed, there were some times where we needed to send patients to the hospital because their condition was more critical than what they had described before they came. And when they came, they were worse off than what we thought they were. And no, they needed to go to the hospital. But I was a bit skeptical. And my mentor there, Dr. Agatha Thrash, she was like, oh, Dr. Mark, just hold on. Wait, you'll see. Like, okay. And I waited and I watched and I saw as they did hydrotherapy and they took herbs and they ate healthy food and they went for walks and they were sunbathing and out in fresh air in the sunshine and having worships and other things like that. And it was slower than the hospital system, but things began to improve and things began to get better. And wow, I saw some major transformations that happened in the lives of individuals that were there. And I began to become more and more comfortable with and confident with the use of lifestyle and interventions and natural remedies. And so, wow, all right, great. And so eventually, I wasn't planning on this, but eventually I became the medical director and then the president of the Institute. And, hey, and then I was going around and traveling and speaking about these things and helping others with it as well. And then training physicians and training others in these areas. And I loved it. It was great. But what I came to realize while I was there is that there is a tremendous impact that the mind has upon the individual. And you can try to change behavior. And you can try to change from medication to herbs or to natural remedies or other things like that. But if you don't get to the mind of the individual, you haven't gotten to anything. Because that's where everything begins. Right? You have a lifestyle for a reason. And the reason for the lifestyle is going to be found in your mind. It's what you think. There's a presupposition that's there that we work with. And so as I began to study the mind and as I began to explore the mind with my patients here and there, I began to understand more and more of these concepts. And also another physician from Europe came and shared some presentations that just knocked my socks off. I mean, I was just blown away. It just turned my world upside down. And I began to study these principles that were shared, and as I did, I realized, oh, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. And I realized that I needed to begin to share these with my patients. And so I began to share these principles of the mind with my patients, and whoa, I started to see some life transformations happening in my patients. And it was really exciting. And then as I shared, they had asked questions and I would learn more and grow. And eventually I came to put that together in a book called The Law of Life. And after the presentations and the book, then people started asking me to come to their location to speak and to share with them. And so then I was traveling and I was speaking and I was sharing on these topics and then starting to see audiences here around the United States and around the world and seeing them come to freedom from the things that they're struggling with. And I saw the power. There was power in these principles. There was power in the message. Now, don't just take it from me because I can be biased, and of course anybody can. Here is, what name are we going to give him? We'll give him the name Doug. All right. So here's Doug. Doug, his wife was a patient at our lifestyle center, not him himself, but his wife. And while she was there at a session for 2.5 weeks, he happened to come for a few of the days, and he heard one of the lectures that I had given, and he was intrigued about that. We interacted a little bit, and he purchased The Law of Life, the book. And after purchasing the book, the session was over, they went home, and the book stayed on the shelf for about 4 months, I think is what he said. And after those 4 months, they decided, well, we got the book. We ought to start looking at it and reading it. And after they started reading it, they were like, whoa, this is deep. This is good stuff. And they started a book club. So they started doing a book club, and week by week, meeting together with other individuals and going through the book. And then COVID hit and everything closed down, and so they switched to a virtual. So they started doing it on Zoom. And they continued the book club, and they did one round of the book club, and then they did another round of the book club, and then they did a third round of the book club. And while they were going through the third round of the book club, Doug recognized and realized that there was a conflict that he had had with a prior coworker, and there was some resentment, some bitterness associated with that. And he realized that that needed to be taken care of, that needed to be resolved. And in the book, it talks about how you can resolve the issues of the past, how you can be free from those issues in the past. And so in that chapter, he understood what it was talking about and what needed to be done in relation to that. And so he went and applied those principles. And in applying those principles, something happened. Now, what I haven't told you yet is that Doug had an autoimmune condition that attacks the colon and starts eating up the colon progressively. And he had had that condition for about 3 years, 4 years, something like that. And the condition, he had tried natural remedies, he had tried diet change, he had tried other different things, and then he had to switch to medications and, kind of the easier medications, and then to the more profound, medications, biologics, and other things like that, in order to help him with that with that situation. And while with the medications, the condition was somewhat controlled, it was still there and it was still problematic. And when he took these principles and he applied them in his own life, well, that's when the ulcerative colitis began to go away. And he has not had any issues associated with that condition, that autoimmune condition, since then. Now, this is, let's call her Amy. All right, so this is Amy. Amy has a condition called eczema. And she had it primarily on her left hand, began on the left hand, moved to the right hand as well. Quite problematic. It's painful when you wash dishes, when you're in the shower, when you're other things like that. Always having to use creams and lotions and other things like that, steroids and whatever to try to control it. And in her particular case, she came from a past where her father was into bad things. He was a drug dealer. There were a lot of traumas that happened in her life when she was younger, and there was distress associated with that. And that distress that she had was actually affecting what was going on in the rash. Now, a lot of times we think a rash comes from outside in, but in reality, a rash comes from inside out, right? A rash comes from inside out. And we might say, okay, well, because you're eating certain things or whatever, then you have the rash that's developing. And yes, maybe what you eat might have a contribution to a rash, but it doesn't determine where the rash comes, because if you eat it, it goes throughout your entire body, and so something must make the rash show up where it shows up. And anyways, in Amy's case, she also was exposed to these principles, this truth for life principles, and what she came to understand was her need to forgive and her need to be free from the resentment and so on that she had towards parents and in regards to traumatic experiences that she had in the past. And as she began to apply these principles in her own life and to find that freedom in her own mind, her eczema improved and then went away. Okay. So was it all just in her mind? No, she had real stuff going on in her body. But the foundation of the issue was in her mind. I'm going to call him Frank. Frank Uh, Frank came to me for counseling, was struggling with various different addictions, most of them food and media related. And just a life where he'd been struggling. Yes, again, significant traumas in the past. Had been a Christian and in church for many, many years, and had never seen and understood the love of God. Had never understood how he could be free. And so as we counseled together, he began to see the love of God. He began to see that God was not there to punish him when he failed, but to love him and to encourage him through and to give him the power to overcome and succeed, and that he also needed a complete surrender like I needed. And so he took that up and he began to work from that standpoint. And over time, over the last couple of years, he has been experiencing significant freedoms and significant growth in his life and in the way that he relates to others. And as he sees things in life, and his freedom from the addictions is beautiful. It's beautiful to watch. Right? So it's not just from a health standpoint, but it can also be from a personal standpoint with the things that we struggle with. Now, Deborah had an autoimmune condition that was constantly getting worse and getting worse to the point that she was almost bedridden. And similarly, she had issues in the past, a divorce, and everything that goes along with that, the resentments and so on that happen with that, having to raise children now singly, and the difficulties of that, and managing a job and a household, and so on. And this condition was just continuing to get worse and get worse and get worse. But when she found these principles, and she was able to go free in her mind from the issues that had happened in the past and the traumas that she had been through and the resentments that she had held on to, then her autoimmune condition of the joints went away, and she has been experiencing a vibrant, healthy life and lifestyle over the last decade or so. Right? Great. Well, Julie and Jake, they came to me. Of course, none of these are people's real names, mind you. But Julie and Jake came to me, and some of them are simply composites of patients that I've had and not necessarily a direct patient that I've had. But anyways, Julie and Jake represent some couples that come to me, and there was a problem of infidelity. And you know that if there's infidelity, that's a difficult one. That's a tough one. Right? It's a tough one to work through. And so I had to work with Jake in regards to, is he interested in remaining in the relationship? Is he interested in pursuing the affair and continuing to go in that direction? And with, what did I call her name? Julie, with Julie. Is she going to destroy her life by holding on to resentment and bitterness? Or is she going to go free and allow God to set her free by giving her the forgiveness that she needs so that she can forgive him? And there's much more, much, much more. I'm just giving you a very brief overview. But yes, Jake was willing to continue in the relationship with Julie and to continue to pursue that. And Julie was willing to continue pursuing the relationship as well. And both of them going to God and seeking for his forgiveness for their own selves and to be free in God because of what he offers to them. And now both of them are enjoying a growing, intimate, vibrant relationship with each other. And yes, you can go through these kinds of challenges in a marriage and you can walk away from that much stronger than you were even before. You can. It's possible. And of course, you have Leslie, and Leslie was struggling with panic attacks when she came and wanted help, right? And she's, in her particular case, she's experiencing panic attacks mostly when she drives. And so she didn't know why she had the first one, but it happened while she was driving. It was scary. She got off the side of the road, didn't know what was going on, thought she was going to die, called the ambulance. The ambulance take her to the hospital, and they, check her out and find out nothing's really wrong, and come to eventually understand that she has panic attacks. But every time she thinks about driving, she's afraid that she's going to have a panic attack. And indeed, a number of times when she does drive, she does have a panic attack. And so that's the condition that she was struggling with when she came to me for counseling. And she read the book, the Law of Life book, and she started looking at applying the principles. I counseled with her a number of times in regards to, how to deal with that panic situation, and then how to see things from the correct perspective so she realizes that she doesn't have to fear. She doesn't have to be in a panic anymore. And indeed, the last time I talked to her, I think it had been, I don't know, maybe 6-8 months or so, no panic attacks. And her life is becoming much more confident at this point. Right? So these principles are there for every area of your life. Now I'm going to read a number of testimonies that people have sent through in regards to, and this is not me. It's not me. It's the principles. It's the message, right, that we're going to be sharing together. And so here, I'm not giving the exact names, but A says, I have been in the church for 34 years, and in today's presentation, I have learned more about myself than I did in all those 34 years. Right? Wow, I was like, whoa, that's interesting. And AG said, this is the answer to everything. I have built a very strong wall around me for 70 years. Like Jericho, it's going to come down. And when I panic and stack some of the bricks up, I pray God will remind me to watch the presentations again. And you can find them on YouTube. And GS said, your presentations have to be one of, if not the most beautiful presentations of the gospel I have ever seen. I pray that God will continue to richly bless you and your family as you continue this ministry. D says, I saw you at, and they listed the location where I was. I haven't been the same since. God used you to get me to understand what God's love is. I know my weight problem is my problem, but God can release me from my problem. I am so excited to get free from the past life reactions. Z said, this message has cracked a wall of untrust in me. I have a very harsh persona, not because I want to have it, but because that's where I am at this point in my life. But hearing your message began to break down a very thick concrete wall that has been up for decades. I have done everything I thought I knew to do, and I still felt empty. I haven't attended a wow message, I mean a really wow message in years, but this was my much-needed wow wake-up message. This is one of the most beautiful, eye-opening, purely truth messages I have ever heard. Thank you so much for sharing this message. GA said, I was so blessed by last weekend's talks. Although I was unable to be with you in person, I hung on to every word. I want to thank you for using your connection with our Heavenly Father to give to me the breakthrough I needed in my prayer life. AV said, thank you so much for these videos. And this is in reference to our YouTube channel on YouTube, New Paradigm Ministries. Says, thank you so much for these videos and what you told me months ago. I also had a counseling appointment with them. It was painful to hear, and I really didn't like what you said, and even some of what I heard in the videos. Right? So you might not always like what you hear. Right? Thank you for speaking the truth in love. I am a free person now. I am regaining my individuality again. I'm truly happy and am living a satisfying life. Thank you for letting him use you to bless and encourage me in my darkest times. E said, I just want you to know that I am continually experiencing God's wonderful intervention in my life through the things you said during the counseling sessions. Experiencing him taking me farther by the Holy Spirit's working through his Bible, but a lot through your book. I have received freedom from such deep-seated deceptions and sins that I never could imagine I had. I am finding more and more in the different areas of my life healing for my heart and mind. Our meeting has become a life-changing experience for me. All praise be to the Lord. E, another E, said, my grandmother who raised me rested in Jesus last week. Wow, what a difference applying the law of life, that's another name for this Truth for Life series, has made in this process. No sorrow, no despondency, not even a sense of loss. Everyone keeps saying to me, sorry for your loss, but truly her life, her illness, and even her death are a gain to me. Thank you for all you do. Thank you for allowing the Lord to share such an amazing message through you. Kay said, I was imprisoned by my own circumstances, holding on to the past and present because I took things personally. I played God. I had memories arise 14 years ago that I chose to take very personally. You set me free by revealing the truth. The words you gave me in 2 hours set me free from 14 years of bondage. The gospel truly is freedom. Thank you with all my heart for your ministry of truth and freedom. JP said, my husband and I have been, and continue to be, blessed by the presentations online, which are breathing new life and truth into our hearts. Thank you, your family, and your team for using your gifts to the glory of God. CS said, wow, what an eye-opening. It's a new concept that set me free to carry my own responsibilities and how to live in His freedom. Thank you so much. LF says, I'm a pastor. I was introduced to your ministry by a doctor in our clinic, and I must say that your messages have transformed my heart and way of living. Thank you for allowing yourselves to be used by God. May God bless you. CD said, reading The Law of Life, that's the book, has had a tremendous impact on my life. The Lord has been teaching me some essential lessons that I need to learn and change my perspective in ways that were necessary. And the Law of Life, together with the Bible and other books, were key in helping me along in my journey. What a difference it made in my life. And finally, LS said, I was first exposed to this paradigm in 2019. I was grieving and very depressed, and had frequent panic attacks as a result of anxiety. My ability to sleep had vanished. This perspective really helped me on the journey to recovery. God's Word in the Bible has real power. Slowly, my mind began to change, and this new perspective lifted some heavy psychological burdens I had accumulated over the years. Praise God for the victory. I am now healed and free. Praise the name of Jesus Christ, my Lord. Thank you for sharing the law of life, and now truth for life. So, again, these are testimonies, and I'm not giving these to you to somehow try to, puff me up or anything like that. No, I've got problems. I have issues, and there's still stuff that I have to work through as well. I'm not perfect, and I don't claim to be whatsoever. But God has brought to me and privileged me to understand a perspective and a message that allows us to put on certain types of glasses so that we can see what before we couldn't see. And it provides us a perspective that changes our whole paradigm. That's why our ministry is called New Paradigm Ministries. It gives us a whole new paradigm on what life is and what life is like behind the background that we haven't been seeing. And when you can see things in a different way, when you can perceive things in a different way, when you can go and look in a different way, oh, it changes everything. It changes everything. And so in this series, this Truth for Life series, we are going to walk together. We are going to walk together on a journey And this journey is going to be challenging. It will be. It will be informative. It will be instructional. It will have a number of different aspects to it. And while it is challenging, and at some points along the way, you might look and go, oh boy, I'm not sure I want to go there. Yet we need to go there. Why? Because there's a destination. And the destination is a beautiful destination. It is. It's a place where we want to go. We want to be there. And you're going to want to go, and you're going to want to be there as well. And the journey, as difficult as it may be, is a journey that is going to have blessed results. Now let me tell you a little bit more about my personal journey in this journey. You see, as I began to understand these messages, and as I began to understand these perspectives, and I began to take it, to write notes, to try to put it together and make it make sense, and so on. And as I began to take it and compare it with Scripture and so on, my understanding began to grow. And in that growth of that understanding, I was much better at applying what I was learning to others than I was at applying what I was learning to myself. And you'll find that that's probably going to be the case as well. You may be watching this series, you may be, you're going to be coming through and you're going to be learning things that will change your perspective, your view, and whatever. And it will be beautiful. It will. It'll be beautiful. Believe me, it will. But one of the first things that'll happen is you're going to think about others around you and you're going to be like, oh yeah, they need this. And you want them to have this because you want them to be lovely as well. And so then you'll try to apply it to them and you'll try to make them accept and take this message because you want them to be nice and lovely too. And that's okay. But when they're close to you and you want them to take the message and so that they can be lovely, oftentimes we do so because we want them to be lovely because, well, if they're lovely, then they're not as much of a problem for us. And so we personally benefit by them taking a message that transforms them and helps to set them free. Okay, well, we recognize that. That's what we do. And that's what I was doing. That's what I was doing as well. Even in the home, I was taking these principles and I thought, wow, if my children only behaved and operated according to these principles and so on, then that would be great. Oh, and if my wife did so as well, that would be great. And so now I'm starting to take these and I'm starting to try to apply them to my wife and I'm trying to apply them to my children and get them to accept it and behave according to these things. Does it work? Oh, no. No. It works when I apply it to me. It works when I apply it to me. It's not for me to apply it to others. It's for me to apply it to me. And the same thing is true for you. It's for you to apply it for you. Now, I don't know your life. I don't know where you're coming from. I don't know what part of the world you're in. I don't know what your struggles are. I don't know if your struggle is disease. I don't know if your struggle is addictions. I don't know if your struggle is relationships. I don't know if your struggle is mental health. I don't know what area of life that you're struggling in. But I know that if it's possible for you to understand these principles and this message, that you, in taking it and applying it in your own life, can experience a transformation. Now, I have mentioned from a health standpoint a number of individuals who have taken this message and very rapidly they have had a positive response in relation to their health and their health outcomes in relation to taking up these messages and applying them to their own life. But that's not always the case. And I just want to let you know that. You know, some people are like, "Oh, well, this is great. That's a magic bullet, and I'm going to be ready, and and I'm going to be well right away." Well, no. Sometimes it takes time. Sometimes it takes time, and it's okay for it to take time. Don't rush the process, but understand it well. Understand it well. We're going to be spending a lot of time in the next hours together as we continue through this Truth for Life series. We're going to spend a bit of time building a foundation of understanding. Because if we don't have a firm foundation of understanding and we build the foundation wrong, then the rest of what we build on top of that, it doesn't matter how well we build that, the whole thing's going to come crashing down when there's significant trial and significant test, significant difficulties. It's going to be problematic. And so we're going to spend a bit of time building that foundation. We're going to spend a bit of time looking at how we function, the laws that govern our function. We're going to be looking at a number of these different things, and it might seem a little bit dull at the beginning while we're going through some of these things. Well, we'll throw some stories in here and there. But remember, the journey is worth the destination. Yes, there's going to be challenges along the way, but there's going to be such freedom that you're going to experience because of this. Because of this. There are a number of resources that are available that you can find. And those resources you can find in a number of different locations. We do have a website, npmen.org, and you can contact us with the contact information that's there on the screen. And one of the main sources you can find is on YouTube. Currently, I don't know what YouTube will do in the future. You never know what YouTube's going to do in the future. What might be or what might not be. You can always look up New Paradigm Ministries online, and if you can't find us on YouTube, that means that we've been canceled, and we might be on another platform or something like that. But we want to get the information out so that you can be free, so that you can experience the life that God intends for you to have and the freedom that He intended for you to have. That's our intention. And the services that we offer are free. Donations are nice, that's great. But, we don't charge for services because we want individuals, as many as possible, to be free. And while I've mentioned a number of testimonies of individuals, those testimonies are not just in relation to me. There's other parts of the team as well. And testimonies come in because of them and because of their interactions with others. And potentially in the future, if you're watching this in a number of years to come, then there's going to be life coach training and other training so that you can learn these principles and how you can apply them to others so that they can find freedom as well. And if we could just have everybody in the world experience and enter into these truths that set them free, what a blessing that would be, would it not? Yeah. Do you want that freedom? I am blessed, so blessed by the freedom that God has given to me so far. And so as we journey together further through Truth for Life, I'm looking forward to this journey. I'm looking forward to what He's going to do. I'm excited to understand what He's going to do in your life. And as He's transforming your life, let us know. We want to know as we journey together.